Welcome, everybody, to the Cover 2 podcast. My name is Nick Nenad.
And I am Jared Smith.
Boy, do we have a good show for you guys today. Two hard-hitting topics. We have college football maybe not happening this year, or at least not happening like we expected. We will get into that. The Big Ten has made a decision. The Ivy League has made a decision, and we will get into that in just a second. And, of course, the biggest sports news maybe of the whole quarantine. Patrick Mahomes gets an extension, and he gets paid, but not like any other NFL player really has before. We will get into that. You probably know by now because it's been all over the news, but we will discuss that, and we will discuss what that means for other players, including younger players and current players, possibly even one that plays on Jared's Dallas Cowboys. But we will get to that all a little bit later. We will start with college football. Big news coming out specifically today. We're recording Thursday. This will be released Friday, but here on Thursday, the Big Ten has decided to do a conference-only schedule, meaning they will likely play only 8 or 9 games this season. Rumors are that the ACC and Pac-12 will likely follow either this week or next week with the same intentions. The Ivy League, which I have close to my heart because my brother is going to play at Yale next season, they have canceled all sports, not just football, for the entire 2020 year. They will reevaluate on January 1st. Hopefully, if all stuff is normal, they'll be able to play sports in 2021. But Jared, your first thoughts on this news, specifically with the Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC coming out here, saying they're only going to do conference only.
It's the smart thing for the Big Ten to do. And I feel that the other Power 5 school or conferences, the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12 will soon follow suit. And what more what are you going to do? Sit here and say that you're going to have a full season? No. Now, the SEC, who has said that they've had multiple meetings with their higher-ups and they are waiting to make a decision. In reality, why wait, right? Why not come out and just say, okay, at the very least, we are going to cancel our non-interleague games, which means usually the first 2 or 3 games of the season, you schedule non-conference opponents, whether it's against a scrub team where you just basically want to give your team a warm-up to where you can go out and beat them by 50 and get your team's spirits up, or you want to go out and play in Alabama week 1 and really kind of prove to your team who you are. In either case, there will be no, inter or outer league conference games for the Big Ten, and I'm totally for it. I think it is a very smart thing to do. It is at the end of the day, the most player safe and coach safe thing to do at this current moment. It also gives the conference flexibility. So, say they play the entire month of September, and then in October, coronavirus cases can spike. Right. And they have to basically hit the pause button and, they can't play in October. They can then reevaluate in November and come back. But because they're playing interleague games, it's a lot easier to adjust the schedule as opposed to having to play outer league conference games. Right. The traveling is a lot shorter. And overall, it's an easier process. So I feel that the Big Ten, it's great that they did this. And I'm expecting that the other conferences will do so by the end of the week, if not tomorrow, right? It really, like I said, shouldn't be rocket science for these other conferences to come together and say, okay, this is the smart and wise move to do, not only for our players, but for our coaches and everyone, the referees, everyone that is involved with these sports teams and sports organizations. It's only fair that you basically, say, okay, this is what we're doing, reassess, reevaluate, and give yourself more flexibility.
Yeah, no, you talk about flexibility. That's a big thing in this because normally the season starts around late August, early September. And for example, Michigan played a schedule that started on August 31st last season. And in that, they obviously have the 3 non-conference games that are now eliminated officially, and also 2 weeks of byes. So you actually technically have 5 weeks of flexibility from when the season was even supposed to start to make it as realistic as possible. So you're looking at starting a season in mid-October instead of late August, early September. And obviously, with the coronavirus, anything later helps. Like I said, I mentioned the Ivy League moved everything to 2021. They've been pretty hard on a lot of their standards so far. So it's not surprising they went to that route, whereas the big money football schools have tried at least to move it back into October, like many of these other sports have done so far. I would expect potentially, later on, this has nothing to do with anything, but the NFL possibly to push their season back a little bit too, knowing that the preseason games are getting eliminated and stuff like that. But getting back to this, the one thing that's big and people might not think about this is, the Big Ten is going to have, 9 games this season, right? The Pac-12, ACC, they'll likely have 9 games each, right? But who else is this affecting? It's affecting a lot of other teams. These teams we're talking about, they're getting games eliminated off their schedule. Specifically, this Big Ten decision, not even ACC and Pac-12 that haven't made it official yet, the Big Ten's decision to play only conference opponents affects 36 football opponents. That's 28 from the FBS and 8 from the FCS, and there were 6 teams that played 2 Big Ten opponents this season. So that's a lot of mess up in the schedule there. And now I wanted to bring this up too. Notre Dame is severely affected by this. If the ACC and Pac-12 follow, Notre Dame was scheduled to play Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Duke, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, USC, Stanford, and Wisconsin. So that is added up 9 games eliminated off Notre Dame's schedule.
Well, you know what? Then Notre Dame shouldn't be an independent school anymore. Okay, I've been saying this for years, and I'm right? Sorry, like I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but seriously, Notre Dame should be in a Power 5 conference. They should not be an independent school where they get to make up all of their schedule for the entire year every year. And unfortunately, this is what happens. So I don't necessarily feel sorry for Notre Dame in that aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, maybe this is the time. Right? Maybe Notre Dame goes, we'll join the ACC now. Like, I don't know how these agreements come about, but maybe Notre Dame goes, okay, we just eliminated 6 games off our schedule because of this. We can at least get 6 back by just joining the ACC this year. Right?
If I'm not mistaken, Notre Dame football is the only athletic program that is not a part of the actual ACC. All the other sports, basketball, volleyball, hockey, any other Notre Dame sport is a part of the ACC. Notre Dame football is still independent. Why and how, I have no idea. But you're right. Maybe this is that rude awakening where they say, okay, we need to jump in with a conference so we don't get completely screwed like they basically are right now.
Yeah, and not to mention they also played Navy, and you would expect most of the military schools not to play this year, just considering they are part of the U.S. government. I would expect them not to play, right? So to potentially – you have 10 games, well, at least 6, and potentially 10 being eliminated from Notre Dame's schedule. Just wanted to bring that up to show you how severe this is of a decision by the Big Ten and potentially the ACC and Pac-12. Like you mentioned, the SEC, they're going to try to do something, but, without crowds, what is the SEC, right? Like, it's a bunch of talented football players, but, it's just football. After a while, it's not the same thing, and so I would expect the SEC to do it. I would expect the other divisions to do it because, if you want to have a college football season, you got to make it as safe as possible and doing it conference by conference. And maybe we don't have a big national championship game this year. Maybe we just have Big Ten championship and Pac-12 championship and all that stuff. And they just move on and maybe you could do a national championship and then just nothing else. Right. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, what are we looking at for a postseason with college football this year? Do you think the safest way is to just do conference championships and maybe one national championship that's just super secure and testable and all that stuff? And maybe this whole thing's over, right, in January and stuff like that. Maybe we've found a vaccine and stuff. Like, what's your thoughts on a postseason for college football?
I don't even know if I can think that far out. Because, like I said, if every conference decides to only do interleague play, you're taking away a minimum of 2 to 3 games per team. And even though those games may potentially be against scrubs, they still count against your record. So your strength of schedule could change depending on all of that. I don't know. Like I said, there is a high chance that the entire season might not be played out. So what happens if you only play 4 or 5 games, and then you have to take a break for a month or two, and then you come back? I would love to have a tournament style play where maybe you take the top 2 teams from each conference
Yeah.
and put them in their own college football playoff and let them duke it out from there. But in reality, I really don't even know if I can look that far. And to your point about the SEC, I know you had a little smirk on your face when you were saying they're going to try to play. Well, here's a quote from an SEC athletic director. Quote, "But everything remains fluid, and no one believes right now that we have to shorten the season to just league games like the Big Ten did," end quote. So at least from one SEC school, that is how they feel. And I'm taking that as they're going to do everything in their power to keep their entire schedule, which I'm sure the Big Ten and other conferences would like to do as well.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
true.
in all reality, the chances of that happening are slim to none.
Well, by the way, if every other conference but the SEC doesn't do conference play, the SEC won't be able to play any of those teams, so they'll be forced to do like literally the college football itself could just force the SEC to do a conference schedule by canceling all the games, right? Like if we see USC, if we see the Pac-12, USC Alabama isn't happening, so there's already one game off of the docket. I was just looking at this. I know that who was it? Just Notre Dame was supposed to play Arkansas, right? Notre Dame cancels their season, no game for Arkansas, right? Like, so it'd be weird. You can't just have some SEC teams playing 11 games, now there's playing 8. That doesn't make any sense, right? So, in all honesty, the SEC is going to have to do this because what I feel like is every other conference will do this. So they really had no choice, and whoever that athletic director is just. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
obviously
You gotta be
didn't say a name, didn't say
Of
school.
course,
I think
of course.
purposely was meant to be discreet, or not discreet, but at least anonymous in the name. But it does not surprise me that an athletic director from the SEC would come out and say something like that.
Of course, it doesn't surprise me either. Okay, so real quick, I wanted to mention this too. These are some with the Big Ten's decision. These are some of the marquee matchups that we're going to miss this year. Now, we don't know about rescheduling and all that stuff next year in 2021. But here are some of the games. Michigan at Washington. Ohio State and Oregon is one that I was really excited for. Yeah. Let's see. We have Wisconsin. Well, Wisconsin Notre Dame at Lambeau Field is canceled now. Miami at Michigan State, Penn State at Virginia Tech, Iowa State at Iowa. Some other games to mention that are all now likely canceled. So, and then that list will just draw further when the ACC and Pac-12 and all these other divisions likely do the same thing. So, anybody playing a Ivy League opponent is obviously will not play them either. So, yeah, big things going down in college football. One more thing for you, Jared. When you hear all these conference schedules, I know you said you didn't want to look too forward, but it is if stuff really starts minimizing, like if they start possibly canceling games from even the conference, is there a point to have a college football season at that range? Or yeah, I'm with you on that too. I think if you're going to do the conference play and it just all of a sudden gets a lot safer in September and October here in the United States, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with 9 games, 8 games, whatever you do. That's not that big of a deal. Obviously, it's not 12, but if you do no bye weeks or something like that, it will be fairly entertaining to watch. And like we mentioned, you still could determine, playoff teams from a 9-game schedule because a lot of times, like we're mentioning, some of these games don't even matter anyways when you're looking at non-conference games. Like we said, Alabama tends to beat the hell out of an FCS team twice during the season. Those games don't matter in the long run. So, it's not
tune-up games.
Yeah,
we like to call them cupcake games.
Hey, Jared, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that we're not going to have to watch those. I can remember, too, a couple times, like week 1, week 2, even into week 3 of college football, where we're like, man, there's actually like no games on really because it's just blowouts. Right? And you have that one big game for Saturday Night Football, but it's like, maybe it's a blessing.
I'm sorry. I'm tired of seeing Alabama go up against like Indiana State
Mercer.
and beat them 70-0. Now, here's the flip side to that. those schools, those FBS schools or those lower Division I schools, they get paid a nice chunk of change to go to those, highly ranked Division I schools and play and basically get their asses kicked. But whether it's $300,000, $500,000, that's a lot of money for those smaller programs, right? That they obviously use for recruiting purposes and such. So it's also a loss not only for the Power 5 conference, but for those smaller programs who aren't going to be getting that money and those resources coming into their schools.
Yeah, no, there's a lot affected by this decision, but it's the right thing to do, like you mentioned at the beginning of the segment. We just have to expect every sport to be affected. I'm still waiting for the NFL to change some of their decisions about their season, but besides preseason, nothing yet. I'm sure we'll report that when it happens, when they start either decreasing games or they move the Super Bowl into March or something crazy like that. But yeah, all right, so let's move on to the NFL. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is a lot richer as of earlier this week. He signed the largest deal in sports history, officially a 10-year, $454 million contract extension. Yes, that's more than Mike Trout. Yes, that's more than any NBA player. Average annual salary of $45 million. A total 12-year deal, including his continued rookie deal that still has 2 years on it. That's $477 million in this contract. There are incentives to possibly also get up to $503 million total on this contract. Before we get into any details, Jared, what are your thoughts? We've been talking about this in DMs and texts for a long time before this podcast, but give your thoughts here on the podcast. First, when you kind of heard this was going down, and second, what this means for the NFL.
$500 million was the first thing to come to my mind, right? Ooh. $500 million. And the craziest thing is, listen, I don't mean to detract to other things, but, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, all these other quarterbacks that are looking to eventually sign long-term contracts, and mainly Dak Prescott. He's been the main quarterback in the spotlight, right? It's taken over a year now, and there's been so many back and forth arguments and reports coming out and all of this, head-to-head butting between Prescott and his team and the actual Cowboys organization. And then you've got Patrick Mahomes, who is literally sitting back, still had 2 years left on his original rookie deal, and the Kansas City Chiefs come together with a 10-year deal, and it's like, oh, okay, that sounds good. I'll sign that, right? Like, there was zero arguing, zero back and forth. Now, I will say Patrick Mahomes is more accomplished than Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson and these other quarterbacks. He is a Super Bowl winning quarterback in just his third year. He was the MVP as well, and he is arguably, maybe not even arguably, the best quarterback and the face of the NFL as of today. Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising that he struck a deal with the Chiefs, but it's just how simple and how easy. Like, I did not hear a rumbling or anything about the Chiefs and Mahomes and his team even looking to get a new contract at this point. And all of a sudden it just pops out of the air like that, right? So my question is, why has it been so difficult for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys to come to an agreement, or some of these other teams, when you see the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes make it look so damn easy, right? And I know I'm being a little biased because I'm a Cowboys fan, and I do want to see Dak Prescott just sign a deal and get all this nonsense with. But when you see Mahomes and the Chiefs do this deal just like nothing, like, oh, yeah, there was no back and forth arguing. Both sides wanted to get it done. Mahomes clearly wanted to stay in Kansas City and build something great. It's kind of a fresh, a breath of air. Or I'm totally lost right now. But
fresh, yeah, I got you.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I got tongue twisted there. It's nice to see when a team and a player can work something out, and it doesn't have to be this headbutting, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So it's good to see, good for Mahomes, and you can't argue with the contract, even though it's $500 million.
Hey, Jerry, I'll tell you this. My first thought on this was I love it, because I've always found it strange that the NFL players weren't paid what they deserved. Really none of them, until about lately. Russell Wilson got over $30 million. Jared Goff, whether you want to agree with it or not, as an NFL quarterback, he got over $30 million. I see
Won't
you
agree
shaking
with
it.
that.
But NFL quarterbacks should be getting paid a lot of money. Top players should be making the most money in sports because the NFL is the biggest sport in the United States, and don't try to argue with us about that because it is. We see baseball players like Mike Trout getting over 30 million, but Drew Brees only can get like 22 on his last contract. So I love this deal. 10 years. You know what? I like that portion of it. I was not ever expecting that to happen. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that Patrick Mahomes at the end of this deal will be 36. But man, I love it for Patrick Mahomes for sure. And to get on your point, you look at Dak and Deshaun Watson because these are the two that a lot of people have been talking about. I can kind of understand why Deshaun Watson's not getting paid because the Texans just traded away DeAndre Hopkins. They may be, for some reason, going in a different direction, and maybe that's why they won't sign Deshaun Watson. The Cowboys, on the other hand, the other team in Texas that's having a difficult time paying their quarterback, they're building a Super Bowl team, but not paying their quarterback. Like, what do they expect to do after this year if they don't win a Super Bowl and Dak's on a single what's going to happen? You're just like, you're building this team to be a Super Bowl. You'd be like, oh, win the Super Bowl and let's just blow it up. Because that seems like what Dak, it's almost like Super Bowl or bust for Dak this year. That's why I feel like it is. And that's not fair to him because, like we talked about via text, Dak Prescott is easy a top 10 quarterback in this league. And especially as a younger quarterback, one of the top 5 moving forward, right? That's at least proven. There's guys in the wings like Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray that haven't proven themselves that might end up being better. But Dak is proved himself to be a legitimate starting quarterback, which a lot of teams have not and do not have right now. So the fact that the Cowboys are being frugal when they have all this money, it's you can sign Zeke, you can sign all these other guys, but you're not going to sign a quarterback. It doesn't make sense to me. It smells like Jerry Jones to me, Jared. It smells like Jerry Jones because I think that's mainly who's behind this. He's being frugal and all that. But yeah, as far as Patrick Mahomes goes too, I wanted to mention these other things about his contract specifically. It's $63 million fully guaranteed at signing, 141 injury guarantee. So that ends up being 3 years fully guaranteed at signing. It's 5 years injury guarantee. There's no trade clause. And most of it, interestingly enough, is backloaded to because they expect a rising salary cap. So they're actually even smart about moving a lot of the big money in this $450 million deal into later years. Specifically, you'll love this, Jared. $50 million in 2030, $52 million in 2031, and $60 million in 2027. I don't know where that came up in the middle of the deal. He's going to be owed $60 million for one season. I guess they expect the salary cap to be raised. But, yeah, so a lot more interesting things about this contract. And I love it for Pat. I love it for Pat Mahomes. Now, Jared, I want to ask you, what does this do for the younger quarterbacks? Like I mentioned, guys like Kyler Murray, guys like Joe Burrow, Tua. If they end up being these Lamar Jackson, for example, these guys that are younger, they're still on their rookie deals, haven't necessarily proven a lot. Lamar Jackson MVP, but it's one good year out of 2. What do you expect? Do you expect there to be these longer deals for those type of guys, or do you think this is just a Pat Mahomes thing?
I don't expect a whole lot. I feel that Pat Mahomes is literally on a pedestal all by himself. There is no 1A. There is no other comp for this. Patrick Mahomes is the Mike Trout of the NFL, right? Like there is only one Mike Trout. Mike Trout is clearly the best player in that league, hands down. And I think Patrick Mahomes is clearly the best, not only quarterback, but probably the best player in the NFL today, right? So he is in a class all by himself, whether you're talking about Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, any of these other quarterbacks. I don't think that they can come to the table with a 10-year deal. Nor do I really think that many of these players would want a 10-year deal. Now, you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes, and it's really a 12-year deal if you add the 2 years that he still has remaining on his contract. I don't feel that Patrick Mahomes will even finish this 12-year deal. Like you mentioned, the salary cap continues to rise on a year-to-year basis around 5%. And within the next 5 to 6 years, there will be a new collective bargaining agreement that the NFL and the Players Association agrees upon, which means more money for the players. So I guarantee that 4 to 5 years down the road, Patrick Mahomes will want to redo this deal, renegotiate it in order to get more money.
Crazy.
Right? And the Chiefs were willing to basically allow that within the contract. So I think it's a team-friendly deal for the Chiefs. You were talking about the Cowboys a minute ago and how the fact that they're paying all their other players and they haven't paid Zeke. Well, that's kind of the opposite of what the Chiefs are doing. And what many people are saying is, well, how are the Chiefs going to be able to pay anyone else? They just gave Mahomes $40 million, at least $40 million for this year going forward, and a total of upwards of $500 million. How are they going to have any money to pay anyone else? Because they structured it so well, and like you mentioned, they backloaded a lot of that big-time money for years down the road, they are able to still have money to pay their other star players, like a Tyrann Mathieu, like a Chris Jones, who they franchise tagged this year. And Chris Jones has already come out and said, because of Le'Veon Bell, who he spoke with, there's a chance that he might not show up if he doesn't get the contract that he feels is adequate, right? So the Chiefs had to be smart with this contract with Mahomes. They knew they wanted to lock him in, but they also had to save money for the rest of their team, because as great as Patrick Mahomes is, it can't be Mahomes and no one else. You're eventually going to have to pay Tyreek Hill, right? You have Travis Kelce, one of the, if not the best tight end in the league. You have a plethora of other players. Like I said, Tyrann Mathieu on defense, Chris Jones. So there are other players that are going to need to be paid. And like I said, luckily for the Chiefs, they saved that room to where they can.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the last thing I had written down here, was that the Chiefs, this is a cap-friendly deal until 2023. And what I mean by that is, for example, Patrick Mahomes, this might be hard to believe, he's only going to get paid $5 million this year by the Chiefs. $5 million for the 2020 season, whatever that ends up being. The other thing about this deal, just to mention why this is coronavirus friendly as well. The Chiefs understand that there might be a lackluster season here, or if there is even a season, that paying Mahomes $5 million is not that big of a deal, and it would probably be what he deserved for how short the season would be, all that stuff. But just specifically, it's $5 million this year, a little over $5 million this year, and in 2021 and 2022, it's below $30 million. 1 year significantly, another year about 28, 29. Until 2023, when it gets into the 40 range and it doesn't go below 40 after that. But yeah, this is a very cap-friendly deal for the next 3 years for the Chiefs to build and possibly win 1, 2, possibly even 3 more Super Bowls before they really have to start kind of condensing their roster a little bit, releasing some other players, or, we get some new television deal and the NFL makes more money, and $40 million doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore for a contract in the NFL. So yeah, it's a crazy, crazy deal. And yeah, it's just it was insane to hear, because you remember, Jared, last spring, or last, I guess, winter, when baseball had all those giant signings, Nolan Arenado, $300 million, Manny Machado, $300, Mike Trout, and we were like, wow, these deals are crazy. I'll have to disagree with you. I do think this might be more commonplace, these long-term deals with star quarterbacks, because I think with the way the new NFL works, is quarterbacks are so important to their teams, especially the teams that are winning Super Bowls. You have to keep those guys for more than 2-3 years, right? Or more than 5 years. You want them for a long time. I could see the Cardinals signing Kyler Murray 7-8 years, right? I could see, if the Bengals work out with Joe Burrow, them signing him for a long-term deal. It's going to be interesting, but I do believe this will be more commonplace, and I would love it if I'm a fan and I got long-term players. Yeah, of course, there's the risk of some horrible ACL injury or something like that ends a player's career early. An example of how that could happen is Dante Culpepper. While I was reading a couple articles, I found out that he signed a long deal. I believe it might have even been 10 years when he was on the Minnesota Vikings. He was only a Pro Bowler one more year after that, and he actually retired at the end of that deal, technically, with the Sacramento Mountain Lions. In whatever
Who?
league, the Sacramento Mountain Lions. I think it was the U.S. Football League or something. I don't know. It was back in 2013. So,
Okay.
yes, this could go wrong for the Chiefs. They could go wrong for other teams. But, look at the Cowboys. Cowboys should look, if you're going to sign Dak, why not sign him for like 7 years? Right? Maybe not 10, because you don't want to be signing guys in their late 30s. Mahomes is different, like we're saying. He even came back from an injury that should have took people out for multiple weeks. He came back in 2 weeks, so he's a different kind of human being. But yeah, I would like to see the Cardinals or the Texans or the Cowboys sign their quarterbacks for longer deals than these 4 or 5 year deals that like guys like Jared Goff and Russell Wilson got.
Yes, that sounds nice. If I'm a player, if I'm any of those quarterbacks or just a player in general, the only way that I'm actually signing that contract is if, midway through that deal, if it's an 8-year deal at the 4-year mark, there is an opt-out clause or there's an opportunity to renegotiate it and get more money because like we've said before, every year the salary cap goes up. Every year there's more money to be made. The owners are obviously making more money every year. So why should the players, right? So for Dak Prescott, for example, the Cowboys want to sign him to a 5 or a 6-year deal. Dak Prescott is saying, no, I want a 4-year deal because I want to be able to get out of that deal and then get more money.
That's true.
After that 4th year.
True.
So if the Cowboys want to come to the table with a 7 or 8-year contract or even 6, right? But the language of it says that at the 3-year mark, they can renegotiate. I'm sure Dak Prescott would maybe feel a little bit different. But it seems like most teams aren't willing to do that and give the players that type of flexibility. The Kansas City Chiefs have been one of the rare teams that not only recognizes Patrick Mahomes' greatness and the fact that they don't want to let him go, but they also want to keep him happy, right? It's not just about the money. It's not just about getting the $40 million a year. It's how is this contract going to make Patrick Mahomes happy while also creating other opportunities for the team, right? So it's kind of there's a lot of factors going into it. So yes, if you want to put the language in there where players can renegotiate at a certain point, I think more players would be willing to do that. But as most owners are, they are very greedy. They want control, if not full control of the situation, and they're not willing to give the players that opportunity to opt out or to renegotiate. It's on the owner's terms. And what Patrick Mahomes just did was he flipped the script and he made it about the players' terms.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, in this deal, there's a lot of caveats in this deal too. All the way up until 2027, the Chiefs do have outs in this deal, every single one of those deals. It will be definitely interesting in 2027 too. That's where that big $60 million deal is as well. That after the 2027 season, they will owe Patrick Mahomes no matter what $250 million. So it will definitely be interesting. And where you look at that $60 million in 2027, that's likely the end of this deal. Unless the salary cap goes up so far and Mahomes is such a generational quarterback and turns into the Tom Brady of this generation, wins multiple Super Bowls, you don't want to let him go. There's a lot of caveats like you're mentioning. So these guys we're talking about, Dak, Deshaun, Kyler, Joe Burrow, Tua, whoever else you want to put in there. That stuff will happen in their deals too. And a lot of these deals, much like the baseball ones, besides Bryce Harper's, there's a lot of caveats in it, and there's a lot of opt-outs in these deals. But specifically with the NFL, the teams have a lot of opt-outs. So very, very interesting stuff. All right, so there's 2 more topics I really quickly want to ask you. One, we wanted to go over the jersey swapping issue with the NFL, just because it was news that came out today, Thursday. I know, Jared, you wanted to talk about this. I have my own opinion about this, so I'll give you the floor first, and I'll rebuttal likely what you're about to say. But yeah, today the NFL announced that jersey swaps would not be happening for coronavirus reasons, but a lot of fans, and I think Jared right here, is going to explain why that might be a little ridiculous, considering the sport that they're playing on the field.
So picture this. Right. Yeah. The NFL is very much a physical sport. There's tackling involved.
It is.
Guys are
You're right.
right. Guys tackle. Guys, they're spitting on each other. You're sweating all over each other for 60 minutes. You're going back and forth, head on, hitting and hitting and hitting. And then at the end of the game, you might be able to shake hands. You might be able to dab someone up, but you can't exchange that jersey that you were just tackling someone with. Please tell me how that makes any sense, right? I really don't. This is like, listen, for how smart everyone says that Roger Goodell and the people in the front office of the NFL are, they make some really dumb moves sometimes. Like, I'm sorry, how do you come to the conclusion that you can go and tackle and hit someone, like I said, sweat all over them for 60 minutes and all that stuff, but then you can't swap jerseys? Like, then it's not okay to take your jersey off and to hand it to someone else, even if they have gloves on. Like, it just, there's nothing about this that makes any sense. And there's a reason why many NFL players have already come out on Twitter, Instagram, and other social media platforms to basically talk a lot of smack towards the NFL and basically say that they are not for this. They don't want this. They want to be able to have that freedom. You know, swapping jerseys with someone is like kind of like a sacred thing in the NFL, especially if you're a young player. You know, you look up to your idol. If you're if you're, you know, a young quarterback like Tua coming into the league and you get to play Drew Brees, right? And then you're probably going to want his jersey at some point, right? So
Yeah.
now he can't get that just because the NFL says it's not safe. Well, is playing football safe during this pandemic? I don't think so, right? So maybe we need to reprioritize what is safe and what isn't.
Well,
And then
yeah, it goes along the lines the same way that the MLB said you can't spit and chew sunflower seeds, and why the UFC makes it so the announcers are separated from each other, and Joe Rogan can't do interviews in the ring, but fighters can beat the hell out of each other in the middle of the ring, and all the cornermen can be right there. Like it's all these weird, unnecessary rules that a lot of these sports are implementing, and the NFL just had to join. Right? They had to join you. I'm sure we'll see some dumb basketball rule too. I actually don't expect it because the NFL or the NBA is really progressive and really smart with a lot of their deals. They don't make a lot of mistakes, to be honest. And they were the first one in general to even start this whole coronavirus kind of pandemic hysteria by their choice to suspend their season. But yeah, no, it is ridiculous. You know, what I believe comes out of this too, Jared, is that I don't think they want any teams even high-fiving. I think they want them to play football and just get the hell out. But again, if we are testing everybody and the zone is safe and the stadium's safe, why can't they do whatever they want? Like to be honest, they could make out after the game if they wanted, realistically, right? Like I know that sounds ridiculous. Maybe not. But like seriously, like once you're tested and you test negative, what's the problem with doing anything you want? Like, for example, like I mentioned, the UFC and also professional wrestling, which I cover, has done a good job of testing. They're in the same facilities over and over again, and there really have been no outbreaks. There's a company that runs out of the Jacksonville Jaguars headquarters that has had not one positive test in over 2-3 months at their facility. So you're telling me that one NFL game or whatever, you end up 8 NFL games at each stadium, once everybody tests negative, that all those guys can't dap each other up, like you said, after they just tackled each other, spit into each other's mouths. It's ridiculous, Jared. I will say this, though. This is my one issue with all the hysteria over the jersey swapping specifically, because I agree with you on all these weird rules. I honestly, the last couple of years, have thought the jersey swapping was a little overdone. I felt like it was every star player switched jerseys after every year and all this stuff. I get Lamar Jackson getting Tom Brady's jersey. I get Kyler Murray getting Drew Brees' jersey, right? Or DeAndre Hop, or, you know, for example, N'Keal Carey getting Larry Fitzgerald's jersey. I get that. But it was getting a little ridiculous when you had subpar players switching jerseys after each game out of respect for Instagram clout and all this stuff. So I will say this. Although it's a stupid rule, I want to give it to the players and say, come on, let's make the jersey swapping a little more sacred than it even was, because it was becoming less sacred with every single game. Half the players giving their jerseys away to guys that, to be honest, don't deserve it. I'm just gonna go out there and say
I'm a little disappointed in you right now. Actually, I'm a little disappointed.
I had
Actually,
to
not.
say it.
I'm very disappointed in you. Listen, I don't care if I was the 53rd guy on the roster and I barely suited up and I didn't play a down, right? I didn't even break a sweat. If I have a chance to swap a jersey with anyone, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put that in my collection, right? In my man cave somewhere in my house. It's going to get framed. And every single game, I'm going to try to jersey swap with as many people as I can. So I'm sorry, but like I said, I don't care if you're the 53rd guy on the roster or if you're Patrick Mahomes. Every game, every chance I get, I'm trying to add to my jersey collection to put up on my wall at my house. Not so just people can come and see and I can take an Instagram picture of it and, whatever. Like, just for myself, I would want to get as many jerseys as I can. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but also, like I said, if I was a player, no matter my status, I just want to swap jerseys with people. I would want to get other people's jerseys to show my recognition with them. So I'm doing that all day long. Unless the league comes out and starts fining me for it, I'm doing it.
Okay, but what about this, Jerry? What about when the college teammates switch jerseys with each other? Come on, it's getting a little ridiculous when all the UCLA guys switch jerseys with each other.
Of course they're going to. What are you talking about?
There's so many college players from each organization to go to the NFL. You're telling me that they're swapping jerseys, and then what's his name, second corner on the team, switching jerseys with Richard Sherman, while Richard Sherman really wants to swap jerseys. Like, it's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. So,
all right, no. Here's an example for everyone right now. I seriously, are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Because
I'm fine.
I really don't know how you're trying to make an argument for this. You and I both go to UCLA. I get drafted by the Lions. You get drafted by the Miami Dolphins, right? We don't play each other our rookie season at all. I don't see you at all except for the offseason. Finally, our second year in the league, we go up and play against each other. You're telling me that you have a problem with two former teammates in college finally getting to play each other? Maybe it's the only time in their career that they'll get to play each other, and you have a problem with them swapping jerseys?
Yes, I do. It's ridiculous. It's making the jersey swap seem less sacred, like you mentioned. You said that jersey swap is sacred, and that went right into my argument. It's not sacred when it's happening 25 times each game. I'm just saying, nothing's sacred when you do it 25 times per game.
It's sacred because only NFL players can do it.
And okay, that's fair.
300 of them in the world. So, yes, I think out of everyone in the world, that is pretty damn sacred to me.
I'm telling you, Jared, we're going to start seeing people swap crutches and stuff on the field next. Like,
the
referees are going to start switching jerseys after games.
They should all do it. It is such a small group of people that get to play the sport or that get to be referees. If you're a referee, swap jerseys with the other referee, right? If you're Eric Hockley, one of the most well-known NFL referees, and I'm a young and upcoming referee, I want to swap jerseys with him. I want his. I'm gonna frame his and put up on the wall. I mean, come on, man. It's all in fun.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. That's so ridiculous.
You sound like Roger Goodell right now. That's who you sound.
Okay. That's harsh. That hurts my feelings, Jared.
Roger Goodell would say something dumb like that.
I wouldn't have made the rule. I still think the rule is stupid. Just to be honest, I'm just stating my opinion that I think it's a little over the top that every single game people are swapping jerseys. They don't do it in the NBA. They don't do it in the MLB. They don't do it in hockey. They only do it in football. It's a weird, over the top. I get it. Star quarterbacks, right? Or no, young guy, star quarterback. Someone giving their Larry Fitzgerald giving their jersey to someone. I get it, right? He's tried to retire 5 times.
Wasn't there one more topic that
you
wanted to bring up?
There was one more topic. Yeah, you'll be a lot more excited about this. I wanted to get your opinion on Fight Island with the UFC that's going to be happening in the next couple weeks. What do you think about the UFC being in Abu Dhabi and all this stuff having specifically too with COVID reasons also? First, your just opinion on the fact that UFC is setting up on an island in Abu Dhabi for the next couple weeks, and why they maybe moved from the UFC Apex that was a lot more safer and hadn't really had too many coronavirus positive cases.
It's genius. It's a marketing strategy, and we're talking about it right now. And even though we are a sports show, we do not necessarily talk about wrestling or the UFC on this show, but yet we are here talking about it, right? It is, if I'm Dana White, I mean, he's a pure genius for doing this, because now everyone is going to want to watch, even if you're not a fan of fighting or boxing or UFC or whatever. The fact that they're playing on an island, a secluded island, right? Basically getting away from all the distractions, hopefully a less chance of contracting the coronavirus. And it's just another marketing strategy that is going to, in effect, give the UFC millions and millions of dollars through ratings. Because like I said, I feel that everyone is going to want to tune in and watch these fights on an island and not in a UFC octagon.
Yeah, no. It's definitely a good idea, because what it does mainly, Jared, too, is it allows fighters that aren't in the United States, they're having trouble with some of the travel bans that we put on some countries. They're allowed, because Abu Dhabi is essentially it's an open place, right? Like they're allowing people to come in. The coronavirus is not it's affected it, but it's nowhere affected it near what the United States or some other countries have been affected by it. So it is smart in that range. And yeah, I mean, and they're putting together a great card this weekend, 3 title fights. They're really making it count, and they're also doing 3 more cards after this on this island, and then returning to Las Vegas. So yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. I just want to get your opinion on that, because I obviously I'm big into that, and I'm really excited, but from an outsider's perspective on it too, it's definitely interesting. And you know what else too? It's the lows there in Abu Dhabi are in the 80s. The lows. The highs are in the 100 and teens. So it's hot.
They better fuel up, drink that water.
It's going to be hot for those fighters. I'm telling you that right now. It is going to be.
Yeah,
and so far, as far as I know, I mean, I haven't checked my phone the last hour really while we've been on this podcast, but nobody has tested positive besides one corner man, and he's gone off the island already. And he actually tested positive in Las Vegas before they went over. So nobody has tested positive in Abu Dhabi as of right now. And again, for all the sports leagues, like baseball, they're having trouble with some coronavirus tests. The NBA, right? Everybody's reporting to the bubble. We're seeing that right now. And the NFL and even college football, look what the UFC has done, because there has not been an outbreak. And I know there's limited amount of people that are even involved in a UFC event, but I'm telling you, man, with all the money that the NFL, NBA, and MLB have, and with the not so much money the UFC has, the fact that they're doing all this means the NFL can do it too, the NBA can do it too, and the MLB. So I don't want to hear from any of these big-ass sports leagues that they're going to complain about the prices of all this stuff. I do not want to see that, because it's ridiculous. And Dana White's even explained a bunch of times that this is a very, very expensive venture, not only to do the type of testing they're doing, but this Fight Island thing is, they're essentially losing money, but still putting on fights. It's amazing to watch.
They'll make up that money.
Yeah, they will. No, they will. And I think a lot of people are going to respect UFC after this too, but I could be biased with that. I absolutely could be biased. And you know what they don't do, Jared, after the fights? They don't exchange gloves every single time. Okay? We need to end this podcast before you.
Hey, Roger Goodell.
It's such an insult. That hurts so much.
As it should.
That hurts so much.
It's meant to hurt.
But yeah, okay, so next week we will likely be putting out our MLB preview. The season is supposed to start on July 23rd, barring some catastrophic, big outbreak or something like that. There has been some issues with some of the teams getting tests and tests not coming back in time. So we will either be talking about that, the NBA bubble, or we will be doing an MLB preview next week if the season is indeed going to start the 23rd. We will bring that to you, and it will be a preview like none other, because I have never personally done a preview, Jared, where the MLB has only played 60 games. So that should be very, very exciting. And technically, nobody will be mathematically eliminated in the month of August, which is something that that I believe has never happened before. There's always been a couple teams that are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs with the 60-game format, in September. Everybody will still have a chance at the playoffs. going into September, the last month of the MLB season. So it'll be very, very interesting.
I like it. More competitive.
I like it too. But yeah, this is it for this podcast. Next week, you know what's up. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And this has been the Cover 2 podcast. See you guys next week.